how are you going to operate with less, even though we didn't even have enough to begin with?
Well, it depends on what the priorities are from the past administration, but in this
Are inspections not priorities?
They are priorities to protect
But
the
with
American
less
worker.
inspectors, you can't do investigations.
What we don't want to do is weaponize the use of those funding dollars against.
How is there weaponization if it's going to take you 187 years to complete inspections and you are cutting the inspectors that are supposed to do those inspections? The math is not mathing.
Well, statutorily, we will protect the American worker. We did not have any of our investigators currently. We're not able to take the DRP in order so that they can be assigned to the job that they are required to do.
So are you saying that you're going to hire more investigators?
The press loves to frame budget cuts as proof that workers are being left out in the cold. Say it enough times and it starts to feel like settled truth. But there's an old rule in politics: repetition doesn't turn a weak claim into a strong one, it just discourages people from questioning it. So pour yourself a black coffee, iced tea, or whatever keeps your brain switched on, and stick with this. Because today, Ilhan Omar comes armed with alarming statistics, carefully worded questions, and plenty of Project 2025 buzzwords, aiming to box in the Secretary of Labor. What happens instead is something else entirely. Those talking points collapse once they're tested against what the law actually says. If you want it shorter and punchier, here's an alternative. The media keeps insisting that budget cuts equal betrayal of workers, repeating it until it sounds unquestionable. But repetition isn't evidence. Stay alert for this one, grab a coffee and watch closely. Ilhan Omar tries to trap the Secretary of Labor using scary numbers and Project 2025 buzzwords, but when those claims collide with statutory reality, they turn out to be a lot thinner than advertised.
Now I recognize the gentlelady from Minnesota for 5 minutes of questioning, Ms. Omar.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here with us and watching the hearing earlier. I learned that you're also a former union member.
My father was a Teamster.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'm a former AFSCME member. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the child labor enforcement. In two appropriations hearings last month, you expressed a firm commitment to fighting illegal child labor. At the same time, your agency has decimated ILAP, including its work to prevent child labor. Your budget proposal will weaken a historically under-resourced wage and hour division. The nominee to be your solicitor of labor wrote a chapter in Project 2025 which literally calls for the rolling back of child labor laws. Madam Secretary, can you assure this committee that you will not propose any rollbacks of child labor rules that prevent children from being employed in hazardous occupations?
I commit to fighting against all child labor exploitation. Absolutely, in this country, we do not want to exploit our children. Consistent with putting the American worker first, the budget does streamline ILAB, that is one of the agency departments that protect the American worker and protect against child labor violations. The budget provides for about $70 million to ILAB, including $38 million in grant funding, while restoring ILAB's emphasis on putting the American worker first.
So that's a long way of you saying yes?
I will work absolutely to combat all child labor.
Wonderful. Many workers across the country will feel the impacts of your staffing and funding cuts to WHD and OSHA. As of May 2025, WHD employs just 611 investigators nationwide. This is the lowest number since at least 1973, even though there are nearly 10 times as many workers and businesses for them to cover. Your budget proposal cutting the office by $25 million, with staffing projected to fall. Your budget would also cut OSHA inspectors by over 12%, even though currently it will take 185 years to inspect every workplace just once. Madam Secretary, what is the plan to keep workers safe when you're slashing enforcement?
Yeah, no, thank you again. Again, one of the overall core missions is to protect the American worker, and that includes in the wage and hour division as well. And while we are streamlining and doing some cost saving for the American taxpayer, we will always be in compliance with our statutory requirements.
Well, that doesn't, Madam Secretary, if I can just interrupt for 1 second. At one point, DOJ was set to close 20 WHD field offices and 11 OSHA offices. If this is happening, how will this protect workers?
So the offices that we have been, that were originally proposed through GSA, we have worked with to bring them online. I don't think that that is a good use of the compliance issue, that we have to protect the American worker. And through the DRP, none of our essential workers, either through wage and hour, through OSHA, through MSHA, were able to take those because we know we need those investigators on the ground to protect the American worker, and I advocated for that.
Yeah, but having fewer investigators and inspectors will not protect workers from wage theft, misclassification, and dangerous working conditions. So how are you going to operate with less, even though we didn't even have enough to begin with?
Well, it depends on what the priorities are from the past administration, but in this administration...
Are inspections not priorities?
They are priorities to protect the
But with
American
less
worker.
inspectors, you can't do investigations.
What we don't want to do is weaponize the use of those funding dollars against...
How is there weaponization if it's going to take you 187 years to complete inspections and you are cutting the inspectors that are supposed to do those inspections? The math is not mathing.
Well, statutorily, we will protect the American worker. We did not have any of our investigators currently. We're not able to take the DRP in order so that they can be assigned to the job that they are required to do.
So are you saying that you're going to hire more investigators to do inspections?
What I'm saying is we did not allow our statutorily mandated offices that we need essential workers like our investigators through wage and hour, through MSHA, and through OSHA to take the DRP because they are essential to protecting the American worker in these industries. We can still cost save and do the job that we need to do.
So American workers can expect that you will expedite investigations to make sure that we are assuring their safety.
American workers can expect that the Department of Labor will protect the American worker, as that is a core mission of the Department of Labor.
I hope you keep that promise. Absolutely. I yield back.
Let's slow this down, because the exchange sounds explosive, but most of it is theatrics. Ilhan Omar starts by stacking 3 emotionally charged triggers right out of the gate: child labor, the labor movement's history, and Project 2025. That's a headline-friendly opening by design. And let's be clear, no one is excusing child labor. Not remotely. The Secretary says so plainly, multiple times. Enforcement against child labor exploitation remains in place. Funding remains. Legal authority remains. That answer is stated clearly and entered into the record. What's telling is what happens next. Omar doesn't move to demonstrate an actual rollback of protections. Instead, she shifts to staffing levels, inspection capacity, and a dramatic statistic meant to shock, that it would take 185 years to inspect every workplace. It sounds alarming, until you remember that workplace inspections have never functioned that way. OSHA doesn't operate like a door-to-door survey. Inspections are targeted, complaint-based, and risk-driven. Treating them as random, universal checks is either a misunderstanding of the system or a deliberate framing choice. The exchange tightens when the discussion turns to closures and inspectors. The Secretary explains that frontline enforcement personnel were shielded, investigators were excluded from buyout programs, and statutory enforcement obligations were left untouched. That's not abandoning enforcement, it's triage and prioritization within legal constraints. At that point, Omar's frustration becomes visible. She interrupts. She repeats the same claim. She insists that fewer employees automatically means less safety, without engaging with changes in process, targeting, or compliance strategy. When she says, the math isn't mathing, what she's really reacting to is that the Secretary never accepts her underlying premise. There's no admission that worker protections were weakened. No concession that enforcement authority was reduced. No acknowledgement of legal retreat. Just a steady reminder of an inconvenient fact: the Department of Labor is still legally obligated to protect workers, and those obligations remain enforced. You can argue for more funding. You can oppose the policy decisions. But this wasn't a decisive confrontation. It was a pressure tactic that didn't land. This is what it looks like when narrative-driven politics run into statutory reality. The headlines will be loud, the clips will be selective, but the record is the record. And on that record, Ilhan Omar didn't extract the outcome she was aiming for.